we're just gonna have a conversation, and whether this turns into a podcast or not, we'll see where that goes, or it may be one of a series of podcast episodes or something. We'll see. We're just feeling something energetically, and it's really wonderful because in a world of kind of disconnected, unintentional people, when you meet somebody like you, for me, I call people like you, they have like yummy energy. I
Yay.
don't know how to explain it. It's like they're magnetic kind of, but
Mm.
you know, but I don't know. What was on your mind and heart today, like coming into this conversation?
Oh, so good. Well, I 100% agree with you, in the sense that like I am a reflection of you, right? I am your mirror. I am your projection, actually, right? So anything that you see in me, and I appreciate and receive all of what you just said,
Yeah.
but it is here for you. It is you already, right? I'm only holding the space. I'm only the doorkeeper for your path because you already know that it's your path and you can feel whatever it is that's magnetizing you to me and me to you
Yeah.
is the same beautiful connectedness, love, knowing that there's more, and even the curiosity and the excitement of the fact that like we get to be in community and we get to allow this experience to be exactly what it wants to be and let it unfold naturally and then just see what happens. It goes back to like the controlling the day, right? I don't need to control the day. Like I can just wake up and say, hey, I'm here. I'm a vessel. I'm being as present as I can with, people wherever I go, whatever I'm doing, right? And so just allowing that space. And I think this morning for me, it was a lovely morning. It was actually like drizzling and stuff like that here in Monterey. But I felt this community and connection already because so I live on a military base. And I missed the flag going up this morning because I was cooking breakfast, listening to an Abraham Hicks video. But then like, I don't 10 minutes later, all the soldiers were like doing this little run march up our street and then like to their classes and things. And it was just so beautiful. And in that moment, it was just like, even though there's a lot of things that are changing in my life currently too, um, in this moment, there is so much beauty and pleasure and loveliness and satisfaction. And when we can get into a state like that, especially in the morning, I feel like it just creates this alignment that we take throughout our day. Because although like I teach alignment practices, the truth, the reality, and I know you know this, Angela, is that we were born abundant. We were born aligned. We were born with that connection to something greater than ourselves, whatever you want to call it, right? The universe, God, whatever, however you like to label that. It's all that oneness. It's all that love. It's all that connection. And then, we go through childhood and we get conditioned and programmed and all that stuff. And then there's some moments where we kind of awaken to those things. And then we kind of unbecome all of what we learned when we were young, right? In the becoming of somebody. And then we get to live this beautiful life that we've created through our alignment. And that feels incredibly juicy and abundant. And the more that we can practice the alignment things or feeling like we are in alignment, and it can be as simple as taking a moment to just watch the soldiers run up the hill and feel connected to them, that is our alignment. Looking at others and just being like, oh my God, I love you for just doing what you're doing, for serving, to being who you are meant to be in your purpose and in your meaning, right? And so, yeah, I feel like that's And this is what we're doing right now. Like we're just allowing it to happen and to unfold.
Yeah. Well, I was a military spouse for more than a decade.
Of course you were, Angela. I didn't know that, but of course
Yes.
you were.
Yes. Actually, the lack of opportunity and voice that I felt as a military spouse, I think is what kind of was the birth of me being an entrepreneur, because military spouses don't have, they're underemployed. They're, for good reasons, they have to make lots of sacrifices. But I felt like I had no voice, it's like I
Mhm.
had no opportunity. And I constantly was, and then my husband retired. And then the cycle was repeating itself. I thought, oh, once I get out of
Mm.
them, my husband's, a civilian, then I'll be able to find lots of jobs. And then I was punished for moving around a lot.
Mm.
And, you know, it was ridiculous. Like nobody wanted to hire me because they knew I was going to move. And then I was punished because I moved around a lot once.
Mhm.
What is happening? And my dream employer for more than 6 months, I went through many rounds of interviews. I was a finalist, and 6 months into the process, they were like, nope, we're not going to hire you.
Mm.
And they said, but we'll keep you in mind. So I took an opportunity. I said, fine, I'm just going to start my own business, do my thing. And I was working with a client on some big projects, and that employer reached out to me to join their team again. And I said, no,
Mm.
I've got my own thing going. I'm sorry. And had I taken that job during COVID, I would have had no income,
Mm.
but during COVID, I was the busiest of my life, my career. And so, but anyway, I mean, I just, I wanted to be there for my kids. I wanted
Mhm.
to be there I had to take care of my mom when she was ill. My husband was deployed, and we moved all over the place. I wasn't near family, and working a 9 to 5 just wasn't part of the equation. So I became an entrepreneur. It was just like, I didn't even really have a choice. My hand was forced.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mm. I love that. I
yeah.
love that because
Yeah.
I love even more that, and of course, this is the way that like energetics work, this, but like, I love the fact that you were in this process for 6 months and then got turned down. And then you were like, you know what? I'm just going to start my own business. And then you started rocking it. It sounds like
Yeah.
amazing. And then they were like, hey, we'd like you to come back. We'd like to start this whole thing over again. We'd like you to be on your team. And then you were just like, oh, you know what? I actually found my abundance and it was actually right here the
Yeah.
whole time. And I didn't know that when I was first interviewing, but I do now. And so thank you for coming back and even offering it. But like, I don't need it. And
Yeah.
of course, that's how it works, right? Like,
Right.
of course, when there is a redirection,
Yeah.
and then we go into something else, and then we realize that we love it, right? Or even if we don't love it, and then we don't need something else,
Yeah.
then that's when the other opportunity comes back and is like, oh, well, you can have this, you can have this, you can have this, you can have
Right.
this, you can have this, right? You can have it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're in that state of receiving.
Yeah. Which, like I was telling you, I think I hear that word when I think, like, if I close my eyes, I hear that word. Like, that's something and I don't think about that. Like, literally,
Mm.
like, I think about it, but not like with intention, like throughout my day, like looking for something to receive, which is, I think, the approach you have, where it feels like you're like, okay, that's for me. I'm going to take that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's been a real process and a real journey.
Sure.
Yeah, to get to that point. And I think, part of abundance and alignment and receiving, right? and having this life that you create of ease right alongside of that, for me at least, was this learning to trust myself, learning to truly love myself, and to feel that I was worthy enough to receive, right?
Right.
And so those two really have been connected and intertwined. And I think as one has expanded, the other has expanded at the same time. And honestly, I think the trusting myself and just learning to treat myself as if I am a relationship. Like I have a relationship with myself. And I think we can get so lost in, the day-to-day things of what I need to do and how I need to take care of everyone else and everything else. And we forget to have a relationship with ourselves. And of course, we're not going to like feel super courageous or confident in things. And of course, we're not going to trust ourselves to do the courageous things if we don't even know who we are, or like, what is the relationship, right? Yeah.
That's where, I start with my clients. They don't know. They don't
Mhm.
even know that. And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely, how we receive is directly related to our self-worth. But even having known that, just like being intentional about that is put out in the universe for me to kind of fill my energetic tank for my life, for my benefit, to like intentionally seek and receive. That is so powerful.
Mm.
And I think that's like a pair I need like receiving glasses.
I love that. Oh, I wish we could do that. That would be
Right?
awesome. Yes.
I mean, I just like, if you had these glasses that would give you this vision, like everything that was intended for you would be like highlighted, or you would see in a different color or something.
Mm.
But we know it, but that's kind of all kind of related to developing your intuition, which I think once you cultivate that relationship with yourself, that gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I love, I think the other thing, and I appreciated that visual. I think the other part of it for me is knowing that it's not just all for me, that I am all of the things. Like I am part of that same energy that flows through me is the same energy that's in whatever it is that I'm meant to receive, right? So, I mean, like given the example that I shared earlier with, the soldiers moving up the sidewalk and up the hill, I can look at them and receive, even though they're not giving me anything, right? They're not looking at me, giving me anything, but their energetics in their purpose, in their mission, inspiring by just doing and being who they are. And by them doing and being who they are, I can look at them as not separate from myself, but I can look at them and say, that same energy that got them up at 5 a.m. to be down at this field is the same energy that runs through me. And so when I can see that they are not separate from me, that nothing is separate from me at all, because we are made of the same energy and it all is oneness, then it's not even necessarily something that I am trying to receive, because it's not outside of me. It is me. Does that's pretty, it's pretty deep, but does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it makes sense, but I'm thinking like I hate that we get so separate from that thought so
Mm-hmm.
often. Like I wish there was something that we could remind ourselves of that more often, but on the other hand, maybe that is one of the main things we're all here to do, is that's our job. That's what we're meant to learn, is that connectedness, that oneness, So it can't be as simple as a reminder, because we would
Right.
probably discount that.
Right. Exactly. Right. Right. Like everything, like all of the stuff, right, that we're talking about, it's all a process and it's all a journey. And you even touched on it yourself by saying, the more that we have a relationship with ourselves, the more that we feel our intuition, the more that we are able to see things that people can't necessarily see, or know things that people aren't necessarily knowing or picking up on, right? I mean, it's that evolution of exactly what you're talking about into one day. And then, of course, life comes in and throws us curveballs, and, our cycle starts, or something like says something, and we're just like, man,
Right.
and we're like, throw all that out the window, right?
Yeah.
But the more that we are in that space, when we are in alignment and we are recognizing, and receiving, because it's not separate from me, it is me, and we are all one big flowing of this energy, the more that becomes a way of being, a state of being, a way of looking at things. It's almost like creating a habit of belief or a state of being, right? But it
Yeah.
takes that process and journey to get there.
Yeah. So how is it, this might sound weird, but how is it that your thought about receiving that, like, you just touched on something I just like feel a need to clarify. How is our connectedness related to how you receive?
Um, I think it goes back to, and something that you and I were talking about, that like that we're all reflecting and we're all projecting, right? So in its essence, at its core, that is what everything is doing all the time, right? So even, I have like one daisy on my desk. And when I look at it, what I'm seeing and what I'm perceiving is this projection on the fact that, onto this flower, that I love pink Gerber daisies. And so it reflects back to me, I'm a pink Gerber daisy. And I'm like, oh God, I love it so much. It makes me so happy. And so it's just a reflection, right? And, or you could look at or hear a song, and you can, whatever state of being that you're in at the moment is the way that you're going to perceive the song, right? Because of the projection and the reflection that you're putting onto the song, right? And you mentioned this earlier too, about, the Wi-Fi being, like when you have regular Wi-Fi and then you put like an extender on it, right? And then it amplifies whatever it's receiving, right? And so we're constantly doing that. We're taking in energy and then we're putting out energy. We're on the same frequency of what we're putting out that we're receiving in, right? It's literally like all this world is just a projection and a mirror back to us. And so when we learn that and we understand it cognitively, and then we feel it and we pull it into our body, so it's not just in the mind chatter part of our brains, right? Through alignment practices like yoga and meditation and breath work, et cetera, gratitude, then you get so practiced at realizing and having a knowingness and a belief that like none of it is actually separate. And then so it's so much easier to receive the goodness from the daisy, because it is me perceiving the beauty in the daisy, and the daisy is just being the daisy, right? It's the way that I'm projecting, the way that I'm perceiving. And so when we are lost and lack scarcity and fear, and that's all we can perceive, that's all we're going to see, because that's the only energetic outcome that we're putting out there, and that's what we're going to receive back, right? And so that's why we don't see the synchronicities, or we don't see the infinite possibilities. And we see it as separate because it's things that are happening to me, right? From the fear, lack, and scarcity mindset there. And I am not connected, because why would I want to be connected to something that feels like lack, scarcity, and fear? And so when we move into the knowingness and the belief that we are truly all one and all are connected, it feels so wonderful, not just because we get to receive, but we know that in the receiving, I am constantly just a vessel for giving. It's just a continuation, because it's all the same energy.
Yeah, in you talking, I was realizing that my perception of receiving was kind of singular instead of seeing it as I receive on the collective. So that's, I think, a lesson I was supposed to learn in this conversation.
Yeah, it's a huge shift, right? I mean, because we are taught, especially as women and especially as mothers, like to be the givers, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what we do. That's the way that society brought us up. And that can be so deeply ingrained that it takes a lot of processing in our minds to get away from that and drop that conditioning and programming. And then it also takes this shift in perception into the energetics, into the spiritualness, right? Of the fact that we're all connected in receiving that, like, in fact, like, when we don't receive, and not just from like other people, either compliments, gifts, or whatever, right? We're actually doing them a disservice, right? Because we're not allowing them to feel the charge that they would get when they receive, right? So we're actually being selfish, and we're not giving it back to them. And it also obviously shares a lot of our worthiness with that other person, because we're saying that I don't have the worthiness enough to accept your gift. And, I'm also being, not trying to be selfish, but I'm not giving it back to you. And so thus you can't receive it back.
Right.
So we cut off the flow, right? And that's the exact thing, that the flow of energy and the oneness and the connectivity is what allows you to receive so much more.
Yeah. No, and it's not like I didn't know that, but I just didn't think about it that way. So sometimes you can even be aware of something, but unless you're really intentional and understand like the gravity of, a certain thought, right? It's like that little shift, I think, is just so powerful. But I mean, I mean, this is such a powerful conversation, because I think too, it makes me, we both have our own journeys to kind of understanding and realizing that we can have abundance, that we're inherently worthy, right? Of abundance. So I would love to hear your perception of abundance and what abundance means to you.
Sure. So for me, abundance is everything that we're talking about, right? It's the feeling of connectedness. It's the feeling of ease. It's the feeling of being more than okay with, in fact, wanting to go into the unknown, because we know that we are limited when we try to control things, and we want to play in the infinite and the unlimited. And knowing that when we are feeling this connectivity and when we are in this state of abundance, that is really what our soul is here for, our inner being, whatever you want to call it, right? Our higher consciousness is the words that I use. And so that's what we're really here for. And that, like, just like we were born with everything that we needed to live life, right? To be a beating, breathing human being, that this world is very abundant and has all of that here for us. It's us allowing in, it's us receiving that abundance and living in that state of being, in that state of ease, that's the true abundance. And that it's not necessarily, in the beginning, especially like with working with women entrepreneurs who are trying to get their business off the ground, oftentimes it is about the tool of money, because we are in a state where we've made this kind of leap into something new and are leaving behind the way that we would normally receive the abundant tool of money, right? And now we can get ourselves a little bit into the lack, scarcity, and fear because we believe that money is our abundance, when in truth, money is not our abundance, right? Our abundance is the energetic receiving of all that is, right? Whatever, like right now, our abundance is that like we're having this beautiful conversation and I'm receiving energy from you and you're receiving energy from me, right? And, when we're coaching or we're doing breath work or we're doing human design, we just have our clients and they are using the abundant tool of money to use that exchange, right? That's all that money is. So that's kind of how it starts, right? That's the way that we kind of enter into this sphere, right? But then we realize, because owning a business is the best, personal development course we could ever take, that we're actually expanding and we're growing, and that like life can actually be this way, and it can be this magical, and it can feel this beautiful, right? And then it's about the journey, and it's the becoming that is so wonderful and juicy and beautiful, because we are no longer the person that we were a month ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. And that is the most exciting stuff. That's the exciting stuff, because now we're serving on a different level. We're receiving on a different level. We are letting go of control and allowing the universe to guide us, right? And that's abundance. It's not actually the stuff. It's never the actual manifestation. It's never the actual thing, right? It's always in the becoming. And the reason why it's so juicy is because we love to share things, right? And so when we are learning how to become, when we're taking those steps, we love to share it with other people. We love to share it with our clients in whatever way that we do that. Yoga, again, breath work, etc. And that is the true service. That is the true energetic of giving and receiving. And the rest of the stuff just comes because we're not in it for the stuff. We're in it for the in-between that lights us up so much.
All of that. I was like, you and I were talking before this, and you had asked me a question about like what was abundant for me, and just to think about the variety of things that can be abundant at any certain time, and it ebbs and flows, and so just thinking about that was just kind of mind-blowing to me for some reason. Like, wait a minute. She's right. Like, there are different times where different things are abundant. And it's really interesting when you start becoming aware of that. But I would love to hear what you think. What do people say to you when you explain that you work with people on, elevating their consciousness? Or how do you explain that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the beginning, and this, being an entrepreneur, right? That like that whole adage about, sell them on what they are needing, like what they feel like their need is, and then give them what they actually want, what their soul actually wants, right? And so, we talked a little bit earlier about how the entry point really feels for a lot of women entrepreneurs, I just need to make money. And that's totally understandable because there is still some lack, scarcity, and fear in the beginning. Like if when I feel like my home is my home and I'm stable here, right? The hierarchy of needs, right? When my needs are met, then I can feel like I'm not in lack, scarcity, and fear anymore. And I'm more in a neutral place. And then from that neutral place, I can grow and expand even more. So in the beginning, when I'm talking to people that I'm wanting to serve in a deeper way, I talk about service and actually getting clients, right? Because we all want to serve, but we also all want that tool of money, right? That abundant tool of money, right? And so that's kind of the entry point, I think, for many people, and even like in the entrepreneurial journey in general, right? We start there. And then from there, we deepen into different meanings of abundance. And that's why there are so many beautiful teachers too who do this, right? Because you can be in your journey to what abundance means to you at every given point in your business and in your life, right? So oftentimes we start with the tool of money. We need clients, we need money, and then it ends up becoming this beautiful journey about exactly what you were saying. Oh man, at this point in time in my business where the clients are coming in and the money is coming in, and that is safe and that's secure and that feels good and that feels abundant and aligned, what is it that's next, right? Because our inner being, our soul, our higher consciousness is here to expand, right? And so just like in creating something new, right? When people create something and then they get to the top of it and then they're like, oh, I'm just going to start all over again or do something different, right? This new creative juice that pulls us into this other project or direction, right? Like that all is abundance, and it's all our higher consciousness saying that was really fun. We got a lot of stuff out of that, and now we're moving into a different, expanded version of something that is going to, again, bring you on your way to becoming more expanded.
Yeah, I mean, that is fascinating because we don't, I mean, how else do we know? Like,
Yeah.
how else do we seek to expand? We want this thing and we don't realize that that's not really what we need. We need this whole other thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And it's,
like so good. So such a powerful conversation. And one of the things that I'm thinking about too is like, how is it while we're on this journey and we've been given these tools, let's say we start to begin to expand our consciousness and start to learn about abundance and all the different ways that we can experience it, but it's still not this, it's a muscle. So how do we keep cultivating that muscle? Like once we've kind of like have our taste of like the path that we're supposed to be on.
Yeah, I think it's the one step at a time thing, right? I think the idea that I think we come in oftentimes with the idea of where I want to be, 10,000 steps in the future. Like this is where I am and this is where I want to be. And this where I want to be tends to shift and change, right? As we actually go through the process, because the consciousness that we had when we were here at the beginning point of what we thought would make us happy, what we thought would feel successful, that we thought would bring us purpose, passion, and joy, right, may change because you're actually taking the steps toward it. And when you take the steps toward it, you are allowing yourself to pivot and experiment. And because again, we talked about how the entrepreneurial process is also an energetic process and is also building that trust and relationship with who you truly are. And so with every step that you take and the courageous action, and the more that you actually realize that this desire is really true and this desire is actually not as true anymore now that like I've gotten to this point in life, right, or in my expansion, then that is when you kind of see why taking the next inspired step is so important, as opposed to being like, here is where I want to be, because you don't actually know that's exactly where you want to be, right? Again, that's trying to control the outcome and control like the accomplishment. And the other part of this is that like, we never get it done and we never get it wrong, right? So we never get it done, meaning, again, like going back to that creative process, once I build something and I feel really good about it, so whether that's a package, with entrepreneurs, it's a course, it's a retreat, whatever it is, once we've done it, starting the podcast, right? Once we've done it, usually we feel like this creative pull to expand and do something different, right? And so that's really that's really being in the moment enough and being open and listening and receiving and recalibrating your abundance to what you're actually feeling in your alignment.
I'm going to write that down. Yeah. I love that.
Okay, so Angela, I'm gonna toss it back to you. I want to know, in all of the conversation that we had, and I don't have a time limit, so I'm here and I'm with
Okay.
you. So just if you do, that's totally
Yeah.
fine. But I just want to throw it back to you and ask, how are you feeling now, versus the way we began the call?
I feel that you have said at least 3 or 4 things that I was meant to receive today, that I needed to hear. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like I knew like you're a messenger, not only for myself, but for others. I mean, we need people like you who, and we all do it in different ways. The universe uses us as well. We're all kind of used in connection. We're all connected. But yeah, it's yeah, I definitely, yeah, I know.
I received that, and at the same time, I know that there's something else there. I know that there's a depth, something else. And so, like, if you don't mind doing this with me, just real quickly,
No,
just like
yes.
closing your eyes and just feeling into your body and allowing whatever you're meant to hear in this moment of quiet to hear it. So, what's coming up for you?
Well, first of all, it's a little hard, like just talking to you, even like if I'm messaging you, like I get this energetic, like it is like this supercharged energy. I don't know what I've never really met anybody like that before that's kind of had that effect on me. But what is coming through for me is that I've kind of working with a few different people and I have a lot of different things that are kind of in my field right now. And what's coming through for me is that I have everything within myself that I need. So, I have like some things that might be a little bit of a distraction right now. So, yeah. I don't know.
Wow.
What's coming through for you?
I want to say I love that clarity, and I'm excited to hear what some of the distractions, not necessarily today, but obviously, DMing and stuff like that. I'll be interested to hear what some of those distractions are and what you want to maybe set down. That's really cool. That's really cool. I love being here for that.
I love your curiosity. I think that's a really, I think it's an underappreciated quality among people. But anyway.
Thank you. It's it feels so natural. I mean, it's something that like I've always been interested in. And I think it used to be kind of a lack, scarcity, and fear thing, in the sense that like, I had some issues when I was younger with like the fear of death. And so like, I've just always been very interested in how like people want to live their life. Right. And then I got into this work and I realized, I believe that we have multiple lives. And so like the pressure felt like it was being taken off, but there was still that curiosity of like, oh, well, okay. So it wasn't actually just because I was afraid of not fully living and like getting all the experiences from this one life. It was actually that I'm actually curious about how other people perceive things and enjoy their lives. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, what's coming up is just that, this is just my absolute pleasure. And I feel like, the more that I have conversations like this, with people like you who are really in it, right? And who really feel the connectedness, and who can get on the call, even though we haven't like, met in person or whatever,
We've
and
met,
can
yeah.
get into it,
Yeah.
right? That it just expands my feeling of oneness, and it expands, I think, my capacity to love, like to feel just love, like continuing to just deepen into dropping the identity of like this avatar Athena, and just being here and just receiving and reflecting back the love that like is in this conversation, and that I don't have to control it. Like I don't have to actually do anything, and how
Isn't that
empowering that
crazy?
feels. Yes.
It
Yes.
is like, I mean, my podcast is just an example of that. I mean, I was moved, like I was so moved to do the podcast I do that I swear to God, had I said, no, I'm not going to do it, something would have sat me in the seat in front of a microphone and it would have happened. Like I didn't even
Mm.
physically have a choice not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Have I ever podcasted or been on a radio or anything? No. But it is somehow in the top 10% of podcasts right now. Over 3
Mm.
million podcasts. I have no idea.
Yes, you do, though. You do,
I
Angela,
mean,
because you create this space.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I show up and I know I don't have to be something. I don't
Yeah.
have to be anything but myself because I just show up and have conversations and care about the content and the people I talk to, and you know what I mean? I mean, it's just such a lesson in that. I just,
Mm.
I genuinely care about, I'm like, and I just like the conversations that kind of have an outcome. Like they're fine. Sometimes I have conversations with people that do have a definitive, like, strategy to it. And they just don't feel as fulfilling, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, but I know that it still serves a purpose, but yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently where the guest, she helps people realize the importance of play as an adult. And she asked the question, do you remember who you were before the world told you who you were?
Mm.
And
Mm.
so I think the more we can kind of backtrack to that and just realize that that's enough, right? That's good
Mm.
enough. It's more
Mm-hmm.
than good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's actually the more we get closer to, I talk to people, and I'm sure you do too, who are looking for this recipe
Mm.
and this strategic plan on how to get them from zero to here, there. And it's not about that at all. It's
Right.
it's about who you are and sharing your gifts, and that's a really hard message to communicate. They're just like, what?
Right. Because it's so foreign in the beginning. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is, unlearn all of the things that have taken you away from just who you are and what you're supposed to be here to do and share. And so, yeah, these conversations are so reaffirming. We have this belief that the more complicated something is, the better. Like
Mhm.
we have this belief that and honestly, it's the opposite. It really is all just so simple. And it's been a great conversation, and I was supposed to learn some things from it. And however we share this, I'm sure people will learn from it. But I don't feel like this conversation is the end. Like
Certainly
it's
not.
not.
Well, we're
I don't know
definitely
what
not
that's
the end,
about.
so
I don't know
yeah.
what that's about, but it's not like I'm just going to have this conversation and months down the road be like, oh, your episode's live. Thanks so much for being on the podcast, kind of thing, which is usually how it goes. So I'm excited to figure out what that's about. I don't know. I mean, I do have this extra uh connection with military spouses for sure. And I've had
Yeah.
other military spouses on the podcast, and it's just like it's special. It's a special role. You have to be, not everybody is suited. I'm sure you know that.
Mhm.
It's definitely not for everyone. But I think you were selected. We're all selected to do what we're doing. So, you know, just remember that it's definitely not easy. And this Zoom and all this stuff didn't really exist on this level when I was a military spouse,
Mhm.
so that's so cool. So I'm sure that helps like keep you more connected than when I was a military spouse. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Oh, I mean, like, I mean, especially, like, when the military spouse thing came up, I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, we're instantaneously, like,
Yeah.
best friends now." I mean, like, that was just, like, the icing on the cake. We were already basically there, and so I was just like, "Oh, well, of course you are. Of course you
Yeah.
were, right? I mean, of
Oh
course.
yeah.
Of course." Yeah, I love it.
I'm so grateful that I was called to do that. It's now that my husband's retired, I see the wealth of experience that you get as a military spouse that other people just don't get